Om. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Vunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. So good morning, everyone, and welcome back after the August break. As I was just mentioning, there appears to be some more work that needs to be done on this heart. So I'll be letting you know about that as I know more, which will be after this Thursday. I have an appointment with the cardiologist who will go on with the work Thursday morning. So, some announcements. Classes, talks, evening arati, and monthly chandi readings have resumed via Zoom. They resumed yesterday, the 4th. Please note that going forward, the Saturday Realizing God class will meet from noon to 1 p.m. First Saturday Chandi in Sanskrit and evening Arati will be held via Zoom at the usual time. We regret that we will not be meeting in person for now until further notice. Breakthrough infections of COVID-19's Delta variant are becoming more common. We cannot risk the health of any devotee or friend by meeting face to face. Yet we hope you will join us online again as we continue to study together the art of spirituality in the fellowship of each other's holy company. As you probably know, but if you don't, the Zoom access links are the same as before and can be found on our website as well as in the e-newsletter. And anyone who's not signed up for the e-newsletter, please do. Okay. Again, welcome. I've chanted the opening chant. Here's a little song that relates to this morning's talk. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder, children of her love. Every rung goes higher, higher. Every rung goes higher, higher. Every rung goes higher, higher. Children of her love. Children, do you want your freedom? Children, do you want your freedom? Children, do you want your freedom? Children of her love. Keep on climbing, you will make it. Keep on climbing, you will make it. Keep on climbing, you will make it. Children of her love. She is waiting to take your hand, yes. She is waiting to take your hand, yes. She is waiting to take your hand. Children of her love, children of his love, children of their love. For those of you who aren't aware of the symbolism of Jacob's ladder, it of course is the spine and the spiritual centers therein. Jacob's ladder, the spine. The topic this morning is waking from Maya's spell. Who can fathom that mystery? The Formless One, here with us as two. They came again as Thakur Ma. Their love can set you free. Hear the Master calling, come to me, come to me. Hear the Mother praying, set them free, set them free. Free, free from what? Maya's spell. What is Maya's spell? Maya's spell is the illusion of duality. Along with the illusion of duality, of course, come the feeling of separation. There are you, and there is this. It's manifest. It's self-evident. And yet, according to all of the teachings, whether you go to the Christian teachings, to the mystical Islamic teachings, or certainly to Sanatana Dharma, commonly called Hinduism, you find that there is this assertion that there is one and one only. So how can it be that there is this illusion of two, of many? Well, it is a creation of the divine presence, the divine being, through the power of its Shakti, its power of being, creating, doing and sharing. And so we have this sense that we are the doer, that we own things, that we are something apart from that one. This is Maya's spell. Maya's spell is all-pervasive. It is part of the divine presence, according to Sri Ramakrishna, as much as the divine presence in its changeless, eternal, and infinite form. This finitude is also part of the divine. And yet, we come to a point when we feel as if I've had enough. I've had enough. Now, this too is the grace of the divine, and who knows how long each of us has been pursuing this path in order to come to where we are this very moment, this very moment, this very moment, this very morning. We don't know how long we've been practicing spiritual disciplines, in prior lifetimes perhaps, but nevertheless, here we are, waking from Maya's spell, because we feel a desire. We feel a sacred desire, which becomes an ache to free ourselves from this spell of duality and this sense of separation, this sense of I am the doer, and therefore the actions that I do and the results of those actions are mine, that I own things and that I am somehow important. I'm going to read to you from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. This is the Master talking about waking from Maya's spell. Sunday, August 3rd, 1884. Sri Ramakrishna was sitting in his room at Dakshineswar after his midday meal. The Master began the conversation by addressing some visiting Baul musicians. Baul musicians. The Master said, "Yoga is not possible if the mind dwells on woman and gold. The mind of a worldly man generally moves among the three lower centers, those at the navel, at the sexual organ, and the organ of evacuation." Now that is the normal status of the ordinary human being. I'm interrupting the Master here. All of us have come somewhat loose from that. And here's what the Master says. After great effort and spiritual practice, the Kundalini is awakened. When awakened, it passes through the lower centers and comes to the Anahata, which is at the heart. It stays there. Now, this is a very, very important point. After great effort and spiritual practice, this is what I said about your being here this morning. You would not be here if that effort and practice had not been. It is highly unlikely that you would have had this desire to learn these things and be part of this if you had not done this before. So this is the key. You are here and the Kundalini has awakened. It stays at the heart, the Master says. It stays there. Now, the heart is the center of our being. Three centers below, three centers above. The center of our being. Here's what the Master says. It comes to the Anahata, which is at the heart. It stays there. At that time, the mind of the aspirant is withdrawn from the three lower centers. He feels the awakening of divine consciousness and cries out, "What is this? What is this?" And in some sense, I know we've all had that feeling. The Master goes on. According to the Vedas, these centers are called bhumi, plains. There are 7 such plains. The center at the heart corresponds to the 4th plane of the Vedas. Ishvara kotis, such as the incarnations of God, can come down from the 7th plane and the state of samadhi. They can descend from this exalted state because they like to live in the company of the devotees and enjoy the love of God. God retains in them, the Ishvara kotis, the incarnations, God retains in them the ego of knowledge or the ego of devotion so that they may teach men. Great sages, after attaining the knowledge of Brahman, kept the servant ego and the ego of devotion. They are like big steamships, which not only cross the ocean themselves, but carry many passengers to the other shore. There are two classes of Paramahamsas, one affirming the formless reality and the other affirming God with form. Those who believe in God with form keep the love of God even after attaining the knowledge of Brahman, so that they may teach spiritual truth to others. They are like a pitcher brimful of water. Part of that water may be poured into another pitcher. These perfected souls describe to others the various spiritual disciplines by which they have realized God. They do this only to teach others and keep them in and help them. They do this only to teach others and help them in spiritual life. So, as is our practice, before I go on to describe the methodology of waking from Maya's spell, the principles and practices, are there any questions, any comments? Please share your wisdom, ask your questions so that there is clarification. This is not a top-down talk. This is holy company talking among themselves. Anything at all from anyone? So everyone's clear about the spiritual centers, coming to the heart center, and what then becomes possible after that. All right, dears, if you're now, as we go on, if something occurs to you, don't hesitate to ask a question or make a comment. Please do. This is the purpose of this, not just for me to talk with
Shankara?
you. Yes, dear.
Excuse me, this is Laurie.
Yes, Laurie.
Can you explain a little bit more the difference between the planes and the chakras? Or are they identical?
There's no difference.
Okay.
The 7 planes of the Vedas are the same as the 7 chakras of the yogis. Exactly the same. There is no difference.
Thank you.
And thanks for asking that question. Anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
are these centers actually concrete, physically located, or is it more of a sort of rough, like a convention?
You are a spiritual being with a material covering. These chakras or bhumi are part of your spiritual being. They are part of the spiritual aspect of yourself. They can be located, as the master did, at particular places in the body, but there is no physical manifestation of them there. It isn't your physical heart that is the heart center. It's actually to the right, slightly to the right and above the heart in a physical sense. Thank you, Swayam. Anyone else? Anything?
So to use your analogy, climbing Jacob's ladder would mean climbing up to the higher chakras?
Yes. Yes, climbing up to the higher chakras. That is the mystical symbolism of the Judeo-Christian story of Jacob and the ladder. So yes, we climb from these lower centers, which are the Maya's spell is represented by those three. Maya continues as long as there is any experience at all. But those the things associated with the three lower centers are called avidya Maya, the lower knowledge. From the heart center on up, the knowledge that manifests itself quite spontaneously, as we will discuss, quite spontaneously, is vidya Maya. It is still an experience right through savikalpa samadhi, the lower form of samadhi. But then we can't say anything at all about the higher form of samadhi, and no one has ever really been able to say anything concrete about it because there is no experiencer there. There is no thought. There is no concept. It's simply a state of realization or being.
Shankara,
Yes, Uma.
could we say moving from lower to the higher truth? Is it like that?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what's meant by the Om Asatoma Satganga,
Right.
moving from the lower truth. As Vivekananda said, we do not move from error to truth.
Right.
We move from lower truth
To higher.
to higher truth.
Yes.
Because it is not as if the spell of Maya is an untruth. As Sri Ramakrishna points out very clearly, it too is Brahman, but Brahman active rather than Brahman still, water in waves rather than water still. So there's no question about the divinity of any of it. But, and the great saints will tell you, it's all divine, all divine. That is their living experience. But we weary, as Chaitanya's prayer begins, chant the name of the Lord and his glory unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean and quenched that mighty forest fire, worldly lust, raging furiously within. That is this saying of the name, chanting of the name, is a bath, he says, a bath for weary souls. Bath means not only relief from dirtiness, but purification in the higher sense. So yes, moving from lower truth to higher truth.
Brother Shankar,
Yes, Bhagirath.
moving along the metaphor of a ladder, the ladder here is very, very special. Once you go to a higher rung, you cannot go to a lower rung.
That's what the master points out.
Physically, it might be possible, but you just will not do that. Just in the way, once you start running, you will not crawl on the earth.
Right.
Yeah, but you will not.
Exactly. That's why the master says, when the Kundalini awakens, during the time that we spend in the three lower centers, the Kundalini, the spiritual energy in us, is not that interested. Though it's powering everything, its energy is powering everything. It's not that interested. When through that effort and that desire for liberation, you come to this higher center, the heart center, then it awakens. travels up the spiritual channel through the spiritual part of our being and reaches the heart and stays there. And as Sri Ramakrishna says, then your heart becomes the drawing room of God.
Brother Shankara?
Yes.
Speaking of, it is all divine. It is easy for me to be able to feel that, experience it around me until I reach until I see the situation like suicide bomber or the things of that kind. And as I mentioned to you earlier, when I have difficulty, how can I call it all divine?
Good question.
Our questions, our doubts, our fears are a product of our innocence and our ignorance. All of the great teachers, including Christ and Muhammad and Buddha, recognized the presence of evil, but they also recognized its necessity within duality. There is no such thing as the experience. As long as we're experiencing, we will experience both good and evil. But its creation, its creator, as Vivekananda explains very well in the talks on Jnana Yoga, is all the creation of the divine. And it's acknowledged that when the divine presence says, I shall body myself forth, I am one, I shall become many, that negativity and evil and darkness are a necessary aspect of that. So whether we understand it is all divine, we just reach the limit of our understanding. And yes, we have great compassion for those people who suffer as a result of evil. And we do what we can. We radiate, the first thing we do is radiate the love of our awakened heart center for all that is, and don't shrink back from it. We love even the suicide bomber.
So, Brother Shankara, every time I reach the same limit of my understanding, same crossroad, there must be a way for me to be able to go past that crossroad.
That's about what we're just about to discuss. Yes, indeed there is.
And for me to be able to see the divinity in that, both in the person and in the action. As
But
far as seeing it in the person,
Vijay, the fundamental difficulty here is that you keep talking in terms of I and me. The truth is, if we are to believe the scriptures, and if we are to believe Sri Krishna in chapters 2 through 6, if we are to believe Sri Ramakrishna in the gospel, that being that you continue to speak of does not exist. And your continued fascination with it is simply a part of being under the spell of Maya, as we all are. No one's pointing a finger at you. We're all in that state. But the delusion is that I exist. This I, me, mine breathing creature is a creation of the gunas and does not really exist. And that's what we come to understand as we ascend from the heart center to the other higher centers.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Tom.
So I really like VJ's question, and I enjoyed your answer. But the fact that VJ's question had on me when he first asked it, whenever anybody asks a question, I try to, in my own mind, to think how I would answer it. And VJ asked the question, and I was trying very hard to think how I would answer it, but I couldn't. And it made me tense. And then I had an experience. I realized how relaxing it is just to say, I don't know. It's a mystery to me. Actually, most things are a mystery to me. I don't know most things. But somehow at a certain age, I got this idea that I was supposed to have an answer to every question, maybe in first grade or something. I don't know.
Yes,
But,
indeed.
but I don't have an answer to most questions. I'm just trying to feel my way through life, be happy and make the people I care about happy and do the best I can. And it's, for me, most of it's a big mystery. So that's my comment. Thank you.
That's where we started with that tanka about the mystery of how two-ness, the formless one, can become what we perceive. But I don't have the answer either, Tom. That is to say, I am not the authority. I am just a spokesperson for and I mean this so profoundly, this is just a spokesperson for the principles and practices that we are given by the teachers for escaping the spell of Maya. That's what we're talking about this morning. So yes, when I spoke emphatically to VJ, it was not to scold him, but simply to remind us all in emphatic terms of what the scriptures and the teachers tell us. And it could not be more fully spelled out. And VJ knows this well. It could not be spelled out more clearly than it is in chapters 2 through 6 of Bhagavad Gita. So if we believe what Krishna says, if we make the effort to make that belief a reality for us, then the kind of question that he asks simply evaporates.
Can I jump in?
Please do, dear.
I like this thread too, VJ and Tom. I think it's just a show of our ego to believe that we have the capacity to understand any of this stuff. I agree with you, Tom, that it's what a relief to just sit back and say, I don't know, and enjoy the mystery and enjoy the up and down of it, because it's just the way it is. And you can call it gunas and all this. I'm not going to argue with that, because why not? It's as they're just all explanations for things that we really do not have the capacity to understand. That's my belief anyway. That's it.
Cindy, you said it so well. And Tom, he brought up the good topic of having the questions, unquote, unquote. And I was thinking at the same time that so many times I actually revel in the questions because I have no answer, but the questions follow another question, and I sit back and revel in the questions sometimes.
Wonderful. That there's a lovely poem by Rainier Maria Rilke about that exact topic, about reveling in the questions until we are fit to receive the answers. And being fit to receive the answers is a state that we can't know from where we are. But nevertheless, and as Cindy pointed out, she didn't use these words, but our intellect, our mind is a product of this finitude. So naturally, it cannot understand or grasp the infinite. Anything else from anyone?
Yes, Brother Shankara,
Yes.
extending the same topic for a moment, please. So if I'm bound by the finitude, if I am under the spell of the Maya, which I have been all this time, and then if at the same time I want to not necessarily find the answer, but be able to have some semblance of seeing the divinity in that action of the suicide bomber, for example, which is the understanding of which is beyond me because I'm under the spell of Maya. Then whatever I'm reading and whatever I'm listening to, unfortunately, becomes theoretical. I'm sorry to say that. And here I am actually sitting here to understand, to be able to feel what is affecting me inside. And that is the action that I'm not able to understand. I don't know if I'm describing the state properly or not.
As the yogis will tell us, as the yogis tell us, where our energy goes, that is what we manifest. So as long as we focus on these things, our energy will manifest these questions, doubts, and fears. When we move our energy to higher forms of knowledge, this is what's recommended by Patanjali. Replace the lower samskaras with higher samskaras. Then, first of all, there is that sense of relief that has been spoken of, and there is a sense of security because as we move along, moving from lower samskaras to higher and higher and higher samskaras, as we focus our energy on them, they become a reality for us, just as the lower samskaras have been a reality for us. Thank you, Vijay.
Thank you.
Yes, Brother Shankara.
Yes.
Yes, I know Maya is eternal and it was always there and it will always will be, and we will be in Maya, but that does not, we still have to try and do our self effort to move up, even though we know we will be in Maya for all future births,
Well, why surrender to future births, dear? If you truly wake from Maya's spell, there will be no future births. So the effort that you make to open the heart center and move forward from there, again, all the teachers, all of them, know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Krishna in the Gita, turn to me with rightly resolved in utter devotion. I see no sinner. Holiness itself shall transform you, and you shall be free from future birth. Sri Ramakrishna came for that specific purpose. He came. Let us look deep in thine eyes. They are bright with the wisdom of God that can wake us from Maya's spell. How great was thy sacrifice, freely choosing thy birth in this prison, our iron age, to unchain us and set us free. So that's what we're talking about this morning. We're talking about the ability to be free from future birth. That if, as Vivekananda says, if we take future birth, it is by choice, as his was. Because we're now free from the compulsion to take. We're no longer hypnotized by Maya's spell. We know the truth. The truth has made us free. And if we choose to take a future birth, it is to be of service to the Lord. If any of you wish to hear a beautiful song about that lovely parable of Jesus's the prodigal son, just go to my Facebook page and find Rai Cooder's recording of the song. I believe I shall go back home to be the servant of my Lord. So we are at liberty to continue to be under Maya's spell, to focus on the things that will keep us there, or we are at liberty to focus our attention higher and free ourselves from Maya's spell. Anything further from anyone? This is wonderful.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
I am Sushma from Florida. Hema
Yes.
introduced me to this class. I've been listening for a few weeks.
Yes, dear.
This may not be the continuation of the talk, but you mentioned Asatoma, Sargamaya, Tamasoma, Jyotirgamaya.
Yes.
I used to hear this in the elementary school. Do you mind to tell me what the meaning of that is?
Yes.
Thank you.
Om Asatoma Satgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Amrutangamaya, Abir Moiti. O beloved Lord, lead us from thy lesser truth to thy highest truth. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through. Light us through and through with thy everlasting, shining presence.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
You're more than welcome, dear. Anything else from anyone? All right.
Brother Shankara, just one moment. It just occurred to me after hearing you a few moments ago that one solution to my own predicament would be that whenever I reach the crossroad of not finding the answer, simply at that time pray, ask Thakur to show me the light. to relieve myself of the burden of the question at that
Absolutely.
time.
As Tom Carr said, first of all, just relax into I don't know. And then, as you say, ask. And the relaxing into I don't know means I can't know. My mind simply is not big enough to know. So yes, that's exactly what the Master says to do. And what does Christ say? Ask and ye shall receive. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and all else, and all righteousness will be added unto you. So yes, ask. That's what Sri Ramakrishna did time and again, is ask the mother. And the mother, he said, gave him all the answers that he ever needed. If you want to see an example of this, just read chapter 5 of the Gospel, which starts on page 132, and see him actively ask the mother, asking her, what shall I tell these people? I see they are so hedged about, that is to say, so much under the spell of Maya. What shall I tell them? And then he goes into Samadhi. She tells him, and the next few pages are simply magic for our understanding. That's chapter 5 with Keshab and the Brahmo devotees.
Thank you, Brother Shankara. I'll go back and read it again.
Yes, good. So we have these minutes left. This indicates that next week I'm going to have to expand on what I'm about to outline now. But that's fine, because we'll just pick up where we left off here today. Here is what, Swami Vivekananda once asked his disciple Sadhananda, who was fond of quoting authorities, as one must do before one knows for oneself. Swami Vivekananda said to Sadhananda, well, all this quoting of these authorities is well and good, but what do you know? Well, I'm about to tell you what was given to me as I was imploring. What are the steps? What is meant by the 4 yogas? And here are the 4 steps. Finding reverence, abandoning selfishness, sinking into silence, setting aside the mirror. This is the meaning as it's understood. Until we find that which we can be truly reverent toward, our awakening of the heart center will be momentary. It'll come and it will go. The Kundalini is attracted there, but it doesn't yet stay there because not enough work has been done to fully awaken the heart center. That finding reverence. What is it that I'm truly reverent toward? Some of you may remember hearing the story of Sri Ramakrishna, the farmer and the goat. This farmer came to Sri Ramakrishna and said to him, I understand that you are reverent and worshipful of all the forms of God and also the formless aspect of God. He said, within my heart, I can find no reverence for any of that. So tell me, what should I do? And Sri Ramakrishna's answer was very simple, very direct. What do you love? And the man thought a moment and he said, well, I have a goat. I raised it from a tiny kid, and now it's full grown, and I really and truly love my goat. And so Sri Ramakrishna said, very well then, worship your goat. Worship what you love. The man went away, and he knew what was meant by the words worship in this sense, formal ritual worship and service. 3 years later, he came back and said to Sri Ramakrishna, with tears on his face, he said, now I understand. And what he understood was this, that as Yajnavalkya says in the great forest Upanishad, the Brihadranyaka, that it is for the sake of the self that we love anything at all. And he goes through a long list. He starts with the husband loves the wife, not for the sake of the wife, but for the sake of the self. And then he says the wife loves the husband for the sake of the self, not for the. And he meant it isn't the personalized personality and breathing jiva that we love. We love the divine presence within it. So the first step is finding reverence, finding what it is that you truly love, that you truly revere. Now, I say the first step because when you do and you feel that within your heart, that's when the presence of the Kundalini stays there. That's the spiritual effort and discipline that Sri Ramakrishna was talking about. There's nothing esoteric about it. It's just asking yourself, what do I truly love? Finding that source of reverence in yourself. Because then you can follow the instructions given by all of the great sages and saints and incarnations. You can begin the process of abandoning selfishness. As long as we see the world through the glasses of I am the doer, I am the one who's responsible, these things are mine, the fruits of my actions are mine. As long as that continues, the mind will be agitated. And so as soon as we find what we have reverence for, then we can begin to surrender to it and offer ourselves to it and begin to actualize what Sri Krishna explains so beautifully in chapters 3, 4, and 5 of the Gita. We can begin to see and feel, oh no, I am not this jiva. I am not this breathing, doing thing. That is a product of the gunas, as Krishna says. I am the Atman. I am the Atman. That witness being. And then having the calmness of mind that comes with abandoning this self-centered and always thinking of how it affects me point of view. Having begun to abandon that, the mind becomes calmer and you can actually contemplate, concentrate, and meditate successfully. You can hold your attention on those things, those higher samskaras, as I said, the higher wisdom, and being able to hold your attention on them, you find that something really miraculous happens. You sink below all of that activity that the gunas are producing above. You are experiencing yourself as the Atman, and you sink into silence, which is said by the saints to be the language of God. It's because the language of our left mind is limited. The language of God is unlimited and can tell us what it is that we need as we sink into that silence, the great silence. As Meister Eckhart said, the language of God is silence. All else is a poor translation. So this is sinking into silence. And when we are sufficiently established in that silence, we can set aside the mirror of the mind. Now, there are so many instruction books for us. So many instruction books for us. Each one of these represents a temperament. You may be naturally inclined towards sinking into silence. Therefore, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras are, and Swami Prabhavananda's translation of them as How to Know God, is a great resource for you. You may be active in your nature, in which case the Bhagavad Gita and Krishna's instructions are absolutely priceless. And then, of course, there is the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, the most recent explanation of the wisdom of God. And on practically every page, he repeats these truths. God alone is the doer. God alone is the doer. All is the divine at work and at play. And he does call it at play. Mother's sport, he calls it. But the mirror of our mind will never be able to hold these vast truths, these infinite truths. So the process, it isn't step by step, but it begins with that step of finding reverence. Then the others begin to be working along with it. As we find reverence, we can begin to abandon selfishness, that self-centered attitude, I, me, mine. And then as we move into that frame of reference where we're seeing that the divine presence is the presence that is manifesting all this, then there comes a calmness of mind that allows us to sink into the silence, called meditation, of course. But we don't need to worry about the terms. Just it happens to us when we begin to have a calmer mind. And then, ultimately, and Tom Carr gestured to this, setting aside the mirror of the mind. What are we doing when we say, I don't know? And even having the feeling, I can't know, from that sense of lower knowledge. That is setting aside the mirror, saying, I I've investigated what's here, and it doesn't give me the answers. As I said, we'll take this up more next week. It is now noon, but if you'd like, we can share our wisdom, share our thoughts, ask our questions. Anyone have anything they would like to add or ask?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
I'm trying to understand these two different stories that I've heard that appear contradictory. One is the one you just mentioned about the devotee who worshipped his goat, and through that he was able to attain to a higher state of being connected with God. And the other one is the king who was so attached to his deer that he thought of the deer at the last moment of his death, and he was reborn a deer. What could have been the difference in those two? Is it like attachment versus
Well,
detachment?
the farmer found the self. He understood that the reason he loved the goat was for the self. Janaka, in this story of the deer, it was Janaka, wasn't it? In any event, whatever the king's name was, he was thinking of the deer, how much he loved his pet deer. And so he was born as a deer.
Is that the same Janaka from the Ashtavakra Samhita?
I'm going to say I don't know, Ramadas. I suspect it is, but there are the names pop up in different places, and I don't know that scripture.
Right, and Janaka is also mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. So
yes,
I'm wondering.
That Janaka is the one that I'm mentioning, but I'm not sure that he's the king who loved his deer so much that he had to be reborn as a deer. But in any event, the two stories are not contradictory, because the farmer understood that his love for the goat didn't have anything to do with that furry animal as such. It had to do, that's what he meant by now I understand, that it was the self within that goat through his worship, which is the purpose of ritual worship, for us to come to understand what it is we're worshiping. It's not forms and activities. It is relationship with the divine.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
I'll make a comment on.
I would.
Wait a minute. First, Robert, then Tom.
Okay. But I would agree 100% with the point of you run into things in the spiritual evolution where you have to say, I don't know.
Yes.
But I question that it's not possible for me to know. Of course, I look at the spiritual journey as if you were going from here to another city. I mean, you can explain the things that you've passed by, but you cannot explain the things that you have not yet gotten to. So I
Yes,
think that
you're absolutely right, Robert. You can know, but it's a different kind of knowledge. It's a knowledge that you find in that silence. It is not literal cognitive knowledge. It's a deeper form of knowledge.
Well,
and yes, it isn't that you can't know. You can know. And if you want to know about the knowing, read that book, Love Poems from God.
Yeah, I'm reading that right now. And incidentally, as you were talking today, I knew what you're going to say with every sentence. I don't know if it's something I read in that book or something that I read some other place, but I knew exactly what you were going to say before you said it.
Well,
and that was
that means that there's a connection with the one that, Robert, it doesn't, I would say it doesn't have anything to do with what you read. If you knew what I was going to say, because before I said it, it's because we are truly both the one. And so you were hearing what the one was going to say before this reflection of the one said it. Thank you. Tom, what was it you had?
Yeah, here I am. My thought on the stories about, well, the story about the king being reborn as a deer. I don't think a lot of these stories are literally true. I think they're more like parables. Parables, old myths, teaching stories, valuable to think about. But probably, like, if he was reborn as a deer, how did anybody know that? The deer couldn't tell anybody. Now, the story about Ramakrishna telling the man to love his goat, that's a real thing, that really happened because we get the report from Ramakrishna. But I'll just say I'm here, and I personally don't take the stories of people being reborn as animals as being literally true.
And I will respond, Tom, I don't know. Thank you. Anything else from anyone? Okay, dears. This has been, from this side of the screen, just a wonderful morning. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for being who you are and participating this way. It is a great help to all of us to be this and do this together. I'm absolutely beyond certain of this. It is visceral knowledge that this is very, very good. And what you are doing, and whether you asked a question or made a comment or not, it doesn't make any difference. There are those who will and those who won't. But the energy that we are sharing gives us a sense of that oneness. And that is that knowledge that deepens and becomes full in the silence. That there is one, only one. And all of this that we perceive is the will of that one to be, create, do, and share. And that's what we did this morning. We experienced that being, creating, doing, and sharing. That is the expression of the divine presence as Maya.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
A thought just occurred to me, and I seek your opinion on the relevance of this thought. Swami Ashokanandaji very often use the expression, quote unquote, as it were. And at one place he also said that on the spiritual journey, in the beginning, you have to accept things as it were, and then they come clear to you afterwards. So in reference to my question earlier about my reaching the crossroads, not having the answers, it just occurred to me that if I just use that tool of telling myself, accept it, this is divine, as it were, and then later on leave it for the time to reveal itself to me, and that might help go past that point.
What a wonderful thought to have occurred to you. And who could possibly add anything to what Swami Ashokananda said? That's a beautiful thought that occurred to you. And as you found it reassuring, may we all find it reassuring. Thank you for contributing that, BJ.
Thank you kindly.
Anything else from anyone?
I would like to share this. I've heard you tell the story of the goat at least 3 times.
Yes.
But I heard it today on a different level.
Good.
The way I heard it before. So there is a benefit in the repetition. So keep telling that story. Maybe I'll get it on a higher level the next time.
Well, thank you, Robert. And I repeat it because it is so revelatory. We don't have to start, on the highest rung of the ladder. We cannot possibly. We start where we are. And we accept the instruction of the divine personalities that come. And we think, let me understand. And more than anything else, let me manifest. Let me do what they say to do. Not just think about it. Not just make it part of our knowledge. Make it part of who we are. We think, we speak, and we act. Make it part of my speaking and my acting, as well as my thinking, these instructions from the Great Ones. Thank you, Robert. Anything else from anyone? All right, dears. I'm going to offer 2 prayers. Dearly beloved Lord, a flower at your feet for each one who comes to your open door. A flower at your feet for each one who stands by your open door and says, come to me, offering to break this world's chain that binds us down to ignorance, suffering, and death. A flower at your feet for each one who takes the path that you have struck through this, your jungle world. Om, Amen. Oh, dear one, let there be peace in outer space. Let there be peace in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters. Let there be peace in the herbs, the plants, and the trees. May the gods be peaceful. May the whole universe be pervaded by peace. Let that infinite, universal peace prevail throughout my being. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. So, for those of you who wish to join us, there will be our Monday reading and discussion group, Monday evening at 8 o'clock, on that book, Love Poems from God, which is so instructive. It is the testimony of 12 saints, real saints, that is, illumined souls. And then, of course, on Tuesday, we have our reading and discussion of the life of Holy Mother, Sri Sharada Devi. That's also at 8 o'clock. On Wednesday, we're well along in Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga, 8 to 9 on Wednesday. The following Saturday, study of Swami Prabhavananda's book, Realizing God. And next Sunday, we'll pick up where we left off today. So, any final thoughts or questions from anyone? All right, dears. Jai Shri.
Thank you.
Somebody? No? Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be cheerful. May you have peace of mind. Go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Presence as our Mother and Father. So until next time, it's so nice we had this time together.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.